The exercise of this faculty are of two sorts, either those by which the soul is carried out towards the things that are in view, and approving of them, being pleased with them, and inclined to them, or those in which the soul opposes the things that are in view, and disapproving of them, and in being displeased with them, averse from them, and rejecting them. And as the exercises of the inclination and will of the soul are various in their kinds, so they are much more various in their degrees. There are some exercises of pleasedness and displeasedness, inclination or disinclination, in which the soul is carried but a little beyond the state of indifference. And there are other degrees above this in which the approbation or dislike, pleasedness or aversion are stronger, in which we may rise higher and higher until the soul comes to act vigorously and sensibly, and the actings of the soul are with that strength, that through the laws of the union which the Creator has fixed between the soul and the body, the motion of the blood and animal spirits begins to be sensibly altered, whence oftentimes arises some bodily sensation, especially about the heart and vitals, that are the fountain of the fluids of the body. From whence it comes to pass that the mind, with regard to the exercises of this faculty, perhaps in all nations and ages, is called the heart. And it is to be noted that they are these more vigorous and sensible exercises of this faculty that are called the affections. The will and the affections of the soul are not two faculties. The affections are not essentially distinct from the will, nor do they differ from the mere actings of the will and inclination of the soul, but only in the liveliness and sensibleness of exercise. It must be confessed, the language is here somewhat imperfect, and the meaning of words in a considerable measure loose and unfixed, and not precisely limited by custom which governs the use of language. In some sense, the affection of the soul differs nothing at all from the will and inclination. There isn't any exercise any further than it is affected. It is not moved out of a state of perfect indifference any otherwise than as it is affected one way or other, and acts nothing any further. But yet there are many actings of the will and inclination that are not so commonly called affections, and everything we do in which we act voluntarily, there is an exercise of the will and inclination. It is our inclination that governs us in our actions, but all the actings of the inclination and will and all our common actions of life are not ordinarily called affections. Yet what are commonly called affections are not essentially different from them, but only in the degree and manner of exercise. In every act of the will whatsoever the soul either likes or dislikes is either inclined or disinclined to what is in view. These are not essentially different from those affections of love and hatred. That liking or inclination of the soul to a thing, if it be in a high degree and be vigorous and lively, is the very same thing with the affection of love, and that disliking and disinclining, if in a greater degree, is the very same with hatred. In every act of the will for or towards something not present, the soul is in some degree inclined to that thing, and that inclination, if in a considerable degree, is the very same with the affection of desire. And in every degree of the act of the will in which the soul approves of something present, there is a degree of pleasedness, and that pleasedness, if it be in a considerable degree, is the very same with the affections of joy or delight. And if the will disapproves of what is present, the soul is in some degree displeased. And if that displeasedness be great, it is the very same with the affection of grief or sorrow. Such seems to be our nature, and such the laws of the union of soul and body, that there never is in any case whatsoever any lively and vigorous exercise of the will or inclination of the soul without some effect upon the body, and some alteration of the motion of its fluids, and especially of the animal spirits. And on the other hand, with the same laws of the union of the soul and body, the constitution of the body and the motion of its fluids may promote the exercise of the affections. But yet it is not the body, but the mind only that is the proper seat of the affections. The body of man is no more capable of being really the subject of love or hatred, joy or sorrow, fear or hope, than the body of a tree, or than the same body of man is capable of thinking and understanding. As it is the soul only that has ideas, so it is the soul only that is pleased or displeased with its ideas. As it is the soul only that thinks, so it is the soul only that loves or hates, rejoices or is grieved at what it thinks of. Nor are these motions of the animal spirits and fluids of the body anything properly belonging to the nature of the affections, though they always accompany them in the present state, but are only effects or concomitants of the affections that are entirely distinct from the affections themselves, and no way essential to them, so that an embodied spirit may be as capable of love and hatred, joy or sorrow, hope or fear, or other affections as one that is united to a body. The affections and passions are frequently spoken of as the same, and yet in the more common use of speech there is, in some respect, a difference. An affection is a word that in its ordinary signification seems to be something more extensive than passion, being used for all vigorous, lively actions of the will or inclination. But passion for those that are more sudden and whose effects on the animal spirits are more violent and the mind more overpowered and less in its own command. As all the exercises of the inclination and will are either in approving and liking, or disapproving and rejecting, so the affections are of two sorts. They are those by which the soul is carried out to what is in view, cleaving to it or seeking it, or those by which it is averse from it, and opposes it. Of the former sort are love, desire, hope, joy, gratitude, complacence. Of the latter kind are hatred, fear, anger, grief, and such like, which it is needless now to stand particularly to define. And there are some affections in which there is a composition of each of the aforementioned kinds of actings of the will, as in the affection of pity, there is something of the former kind towards a person suffering, and something of the latter towards what he suffers. And so in zeal there is in it high approbation of some person or thing, together with vigorous opposition to what is conceived to be contrary to it.